We are the apostate sisters, Patty and Nancy, and we are here because we grew up in a doomsday cult and we think nobody else should have to go through that shit. So we're here to talk
Word.
about it, debunk it, and get a little feisty about other religious things, hey?
I'm liking it. Yes. Yes. I
I
like
think
that
feisty.
intro. That's feisty.
Huh?
Yes, feisty. I like that intro. And yeah, we have some issues that we're still working out. And yeah, we want to put a stop to this horse shit at its roots. No more mental control. Thank you very much.
You're right.
No fucks, especially after the way you and I were raised. I give no fucks at all.
I mean, in a way, it does hurt, right? The
Huh?
idea of like that our lives were so controlled to the point that here we're like still trying to reclaim it.
Do you remember that, like, when we sat down for dinner, we had to ask permission to leave the table? Do you remember
Yes.
that? Yeah.
Yeah. I
Okay.
didn't start till we were a little bit older.
Oh, really?
I don't remember why. Mm-hmm.
I just
Probably was
going through this,
somebody
I
in
think.
the family got antsy and was like getting up all the time.
Mm. And Dad always used the term like, "Let's pretend we're a family." We're like, oh, it used to be so cringy to me.
It's kind of sad, actually.
Mm.
I mean, it's like a subtle acknowledgement of the sad state of our actual togetherness.
Mm.
Pretend we're a family.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe because the way that you treated us didn't engender uh familial love from the children and feelings of being safe and cared for.
Ah, yes.
Oh,
And
is
so you had
that
to
why?
control it. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So
We
you
are
had to
going to remember
control and
so many things.
pretend.
So many things are going to pop up that we remember. Like, oh, that's fucked up. And we didn't even see. We saw such a small portion. That's such a
Well,
small portion. All the things that they didn't talk to us about. You know?
it's true, right? They kept their racism under wraps pretty good. That was good at least.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, you can go and read up on Armstrong. I mean, he was pretty adamant about not marrying outside your race or religion.
Oh,
Yeah, very strict. They never even stressed marriage much, aside from the fact that we couldn't, date, have sex outside marriage or masturbate, and because that was meant for our husbands. But other than that, they didn't really talk about marriage because I don't think they expected the world to last and up until that point. Right?
exactly.
They didn't.
I
They
was
didn't expect the world to still
no,
be.
I was repeatedly told I wouldn't grow up. I was repeatedly like I was poo-pooed at when I wanted to apply to college.
Poo-pooed. That's so a mom term.
I know all of my momism terms are going to come out as we're talking about this, I suppose.
Well,
So thank goodness I didn't listen to them because where would I be? What would I have been doing? Sitting and working some dead end job, just waiting for the end to come in the next few years? Except they've glossed over the fact that Herbert W. Armstrong was very clear that Christ was going to return before he died.
mm-hmm.
Well, that was 1986. And also, they went on a big tirade when I was young about false prophets. And if they predict something and it doesn't happen, you shouldn't be listening to them because they were a false prophet.
Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
And I think mom and dad are so confused right now why the world hasn't ended yet. Like they're just waiting for it. I'm like, why is it not happening yet?
Well, okay, so what is our purpose here?
We don't want other people to go through what we went through. And I think what helped me in my journey to personal freedom and well-being, which I'm still on, my whole deconstruction, was other people. there's other people on YouTube and podcasts that are also talking about the same subject. And if it weren't for them, I wouldn't have felt like I have some sort of community and group of people to be able to talk to and relate to. So I think we're just wanting to be part of that community, be like, hey, look, we're out here too. We're going through the same thing. And yeah, we're going to tell our story, and maybe it hits home for other people. And it also is healing for us to be able to talk about it. So
Good point.
yeah, there's a reason so many people are leaving churches. And I think we're going to come to some astronomical revelations about the effects, because I think we're still unraveling them.
I think it is all about the stars, but that's fine.
I know your whole spiritual side you've got.
Yeah. I mean, but that doesn't affect reality. It's just the things we don't know yet and that I like to think about. But
yes, and that's perfectly fine that we don't have the answers to everything.
Yeah, I mean, my whole reason for wanting to do this podcast with you is we're sisters.
Yep.
And I think it'll be really fun because we have the best conversation. But more than that, you've been talking about how when you were starting to come out of Christianity and deconstruct the nonsense that was put into our heads by the cult we grew up in, that you found a lot of help by seeing other people's stories out there online. And it made you feel not so alone, and it made you realize it's possible to get past these things and the damage that was done. Yes. And so I think it's great that you and I, since we do have these great conversations, we can put that out there and let other people who may have experienced other churches of high control or similar cults, especially relating to a doomsday cult, right? That's like a whole lot of stuff going on in a person's brain.
Yes.
You know, maybe people who have been through these things can come to this podcast and say,
have a safe space.
Me too. Yeah.
Yep.
I went through that shit also.
Yeah, there's a lot out there and a lot of different types of churches. I know, well, I look at churches in general as cults. I know that can be a little controversial as far as the term. There's a lot of churches out there that are, very modern and preach things like love. And I don't remember any of that growing up. In fact, love was not really a concept. I was more just kind of afraid of this God, and I had to do what he said. So it just felt like slavery. And that's where I'm coming from on it. That's what I remember. And so that's a lot of deconstructing right there.
Right. Well, you're right about the fear and the love thing, because the weird part is love was mentioned and that God loved us and everything, right? God so loved the world. I mean, even though they weren't all as Jesus-y, they're more Old Testament, they still definitely talked about that. And they promoted it almost as a good thing to be afraid, that being afraid of God, like fear of God was a good thing. And it was like that way of saying fear of God was almost synonymous with like reverence or something. Such that at least at the time, I didn't think of that kind of fear in the same way I thought of fear of kidnappers, or it was different. It was like, isn't that weird though?
Yes.
Like fear had
I know what you're talking about.
To me.
Right.
Yeah, it was like respect fear versus fear.
Right, which is almost in a way, you could compare that with an abusive relationship. Like,
let's just get right to it. You're not wrong.
I'm not wrong, because look at it. I'm supposed to actually have some kind of relationship with this entity that I, quite frankly, don't even like really believe in, but yet I'm afraid of it. I'm supposed to love it at the same time and do everything it says. And as an adult, I'm supposed to give a substantial portion of my money to it. I'm like, this sounds like an abusive relationship. It sounds like a scam. That's what it said. It sounds like mental slavery to me. And I don't know how else I can look at it.
Well, let's think about this entity, this God. This God created everything, is capable of anything, and needs us puny little humans to go, oh, you're so great. What a narcissist.
Well, Yeah.
I mean, it's like the people who have babies just so they have someone to like abuse and
Oh, what
do
a good
things for them.
comparison. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, and wanting babies to look like you and act like you. Oh
Oh my God, gross.
my God. Yeah, there's so
Yeah.
many different ways we could take this. Wow.
Yes. I mean, I've heard it said, I think it was a Sam Harris quote, that to believe in God in the way that a lot of evangelicals do today is really the
Mhm.
perfection of narcissism,
Ooh, that's
right?
another
I
good
mean,
comparison.
God loves me, he's giving this to me. It's like we became, evangelicals became a little fractal of their huge narcissistic God.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
I was always confused by churches, like when I became an adult. I'm like, these people seem so excited to be there and happy and love this God. We didn't have any of that growing up. Almost feeling joy and happiness. I felt guilty because it's like it was ingrained in my brain that I was not supposed to feel those things. I was supposed to feel fear and guilt and shame and all these just horrible feelings. They taught us that that was a good thing.
Right.
Am I wrong about that? I don't know.
Well, that's the weird dichotomy of it is, yeah, we were definitely conditioned that like everything's gonna end and the world is horrible,
Hmm.
and you're a sinner and you are bad from birth, but yet we were supposed to find our joy in the Lord. So it was a
Because we
weird
were
conflating of what,
chosen.
yeah. Well, it was a weird conflating of what happiness, joy, and love actually is when love looks like fear and joy looks like shame.
Hmm.
Yeah, that'll mess up a person for sure.
I'm surprised we didn't end up more messed up. Well,
Right? The high control piece probably helped us not get more messed up in a way.
oh
You
yeah.
know, there was things that we maintained.
But the control aspect, I realize I have a lot of problems. I feel like I've gotten better, but once I got out into the real world, because our parents really didn't teach us anything about the real world. I mean, we were
No,
taught it was going to end. So what did
yeah,
they teach us once we got out on our own? You were in college already. I was age 17 when they moved away and just trying to figure shit out. Very different paths we took, but I had a really rough time out there at jobs with my social anxiety. I had depression, drank a lot, and I would be terrible at my jobs because I was waiting for people to tell me what to do. I didn't realize I had a mind and personality all on my own and I could use those things to move forward. But no, I was waiting for people to tell me what to do. But I think that was one of the reasons I joined the military too, is I needed
mhm.
I don't know, a place to belong. And in the military, they give you orders and you just follow them without question because I was used to that. you know.
Isn't it weird how there can be safety in that? It feels safer to be
Mhm.
like, look, I have the answer. And look, I know that I know that I know that these things are going to happen.
Mhm.
It feels like solid footing,
Yeah. Makes them
but
feel
you have
special
to
too.
forego think. Yeah. Well, but you have to forego actually thinking about it. You have to just trust that that's true, that
Yeah.
this thing that's been promised is real and it's going to happen.
That's the weird thing about faith, if that's the right word. Yeah, I would definitely advise caution on faith. I'm like, if you're just going off faith for something, then why believe in that and not something else?
So here we go. Apostasy is the rejection of Christ by one who has been a Christian. Apostasy is a theological category describing those who have voluntarily and consciously abandoned their faith in the God of the covenant, who manifests himself most completely in Jesus Christ. Apostasy is the antonym of conversion. It is deconversion.
Okay. I guess I was always confused by this. I always looked at religion all religions as pure mythology. Like I just never, people are so attracted, like our parents, so attracted to the afterlife. I'm just like, I guess I never even thought about that kind of stuff. I'm just like, why am I thinking about that when here I'm just trying to explore this world and this universe that I'm in now, that I know I'm alive. Like, I find it all very fascinating. I always wanted to travel the world and learn about cultures and learn about other food and people and all that. And like, I never had any interest in the afterlife. Why would I? Why would I look forward to dying and seeing
Oh,
what comes after? Why?
I mean, I have to think that that whole idea came from a lot of generations of life being really terrible for humans. I
Yeah.
mean, right? Well, okay, so life being terrible to begin with, so everyone needs something to like
Look
look
forward to.
forward to and
Mhm.
contextualize. Why is this shit happening? Why should I have pain? Why should my children be dying? Why should, like why should all these things be happening? And to have an answer of, well, obviously it's a fallen world and something better is coming. All of a sudden there's a reason for things being terrible,
Right.
and it's like, if things are terrible, even if you don't think there's a reason, if you think you can do something about it, that helps. But if you all like it's terrible and you are completely disempowered from doing anything about it, what
Right.
else do you have to hang on to? Right?
Yes.
A promise. That's it.
Hmm. That's a big
it
promise.
I can see how that developed in a time and place when there's just not much to be joyful about,
Hmm.
because I can understand how that could be the case in the world. But
Yeah.
it's funny how that notion was able to carry through even to our childhood in the 80s, when we clearly had could have had all the modern conveniences.
Yeah.
I mean, like, like life was objectively very good
Yeah.
compared to people in
Absolutely.
all other parts of the world, in all other parts of human history. And yet we're still trying to be controlled with the notion that it's terrible.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying everything's perfect and humans have it all worked out. Obviously we don't. But at this point, the thing that's getting in our way is hanging on to these old religious notions, because we can't see past the end of our lives, so to
Mhm.
speak, to think that we could make something better for future generations.
Absolutely.
It's
Oh,
it's
that's
just
so
so
good.
weird how that whole idea focused us all in on our own personal survival instead of what animals naturally behave at, which is the survival of their kind.
Yes. And that has stopped us as a species from progressing. If you
Mhm.
hold on to these ideals that are so archaic, which the Bible is, holy shit.
I mean,
I mean,
literally.
fuck. Like, why are we still looking? I mean, so much in the Bible has been disproved. I mean,
Or
since,
at least can't be proved.
or can't be proved. Yeah, all of that. But I mean, the people that wrote the Bible thought the earth was flat. I mean, think about that. They had no explanations for things, and so they came up with all these ideas. Um, whatever it was. I mean, I would sooner believe a lot of the Bible comes from like aliens visiting than I would have divine beings. I mean, it actually makes more sense to me. But again, that's off topic. I
That's
mean,
all right. I'm sure we'll delve into aliens around here.
we can get there. Yeah. But there's so many of these similar stories throughout history. I mean, what could people do? They talked about what they saw, put it into stories, and came up with all kinds of shit, all the mythological stories. I fail to see how the book of Genesis is any different than any other mythological stories out there. I mean,
Hmm.
and why are we still carrying this around?
You made a good point about it being mythology, and that's how you thought of it earlier, because that was something that I think was maybe a very early hole that got poked in my religious belief or religious conditioning, I guess I'll say.
Mhm.
And that was that as I was learning in school about Zeus and Athena and all of that, I had this thought of like, whoa, they they thought they were real. Like they really thought these people, these gods were real.
Mm-hmm.
And just that thought, like, the notion that, well, they didn't think it was mythology, they thought it was real. And then I was like,
Yes.
we think our God is real. And to me, that was like,
Was that an eye opener?
my mind control was pretty complete early on.
Oh, you
that'll
were
happen when you,
you were in it, Pads. Like I feel like I was just pretty numb to the whole thing and looked at it all as more of a metaphor. I'm like, okay, they're into this shit. I wouldn't say I truly ever believed in this stuff. Yeah, I told it to people and at one point in my life, I even called myself a Christian. I was going to one of those evangelical churches, but did I ever truly believe it? I don't think so. I thought it was more of like just a social construct for people, a place of gathering to make them feel better, to make them think that someone's watching over them. I don't know. Oh, it's so hard for me to look at Christianity as anything good. It's so hard for me to. So
mm-hmm.
I'm just blown away.
I will maintain that although there are progressive churches out there that are accepting of all people and everything, and they want to just say, oh, we're just taking the love everyone and
But do
whatever,
they
good parts
believe
of it.
that? Or are they
Well,
losing people? They're losing members, they're losing money, and they have to get on that train. Otherwise, they're going to fall apart, you know?
I think it's people who weren't as hurt by the church and it was more just a cultural part of their life. And so they don't see the harm in the same way. And I think a lot of them would also be like, well, it's not like Jesus is the only way. So it's kind of okay. I just still think we are going to progress faster, improve more, see each other better if we know how to believe true things,
That's
right?
true.
Because if, yeah,
How
because
do
if,
we know what's true? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
How do we
yeah, and to
determine?
value things that are true
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning instead of like, here, you need to know these stories so you feel safe in the world.
But why?
You
I was
know,
always asking the question why, and I was so deterred
yeah.
from that. Even a certain family member of ours was annoyed that his child kept asking the questions why. I'm like, isn't that a good thing that your child is questioning why? They should be questioning you. They should be questioning everyone to
Oh,
reach
yeah, they should.
a conclusion. I looked at that as a good thing, and I was blown away that he thought that was a bad thing. But again, when it comes to things like the word obedience, which makes me want to vomit, I hate that word obedience. Oh my God. But that's what it is. That all ended when we got into our late teens, early 20s. And then we took our own journeys from there. But this church that we had no other choice but to go through, I think we need to discuss it because it is very different from a lot of the churches that are around today. I mean, obviously, we view it all as kind of the same thing, it's the same damn book. And yeah, let's maybe discuss that a little bit.
So we grew up in the Worldwide Church of God,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I guess the general term for that belief system is Armstrongism. And that's
Yeah.
because the guy who started the whole thing in the 1930s was Herbert W. Armstrong, and he started it out of Eugene, Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
with a radio program.
Called the Radio Church of God. He founded it in 1934 because he was just on the radio initially. It was like some
Right.
sort of small segment, but he was able to pull people in because he was talking about the world tomorrow. That was his whole concept of like this perfect, amazing place that you go once you die.
Mm.
So
Well,
he
and at the time, wasn't racial, like white supremacy, a big part of it? I
was
mean,
absolutely well.
so I
So
remember something about, like, I started to read one of their pamphlets or something, and it said, it's not grace, it's race. And it was the idea that God that God had transferred his designation of his elect people
his chosen
from the
people.
Israelites
The
to
first fruits.
white English speakers. Oh,
Yes.
damn.
Well, his whole thing was the lost, was it 10 tribes of Israel
Yeah.
that the descendants were in like Western Europe and the US, meaning all these people who, of course, we all were, Jesus Christ, how arrogant can you get, were part of the prophecies of the Bible. So a little bit about Armstrong and who he was. First of all, he was an advertising man. Okay. He was advertising. So he grew up as a Quaker, like his parents were. He joined this like Seventh-day Adventist church. And I guess his ideals were too, he splintered off. I mean, it's our whole childhood has always been about splintering off from different churches and finding the right one. Well, he created like this splinter cell of Seventh Day Adventists, and a lot of the teachings were very similar. So I guess we can get into what he taught. It was very much Christian fundamentalism. Would you agree? Is that kind of what it was? A little bit of Judaism mixed in, along with
Yeah.
the Adventists. So he taught British Israelism. He had a strict adherence to like the Sabbath being Saturday, which is very much a Jewish tradition as well. He forbid things like Christmas, Halloween, and Easter, and even birthdays. I mean, he looked at all of those as being pagan in origin. I remember that being a big focal point too.
Yeah.
And pagans at the time, that wasn't even like an actual religion.
I don't think so. I think pagan was just a word that meant non-Christian.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, a lot of sources do say that. Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
think pagan eventually became a religion, didn't it?
Well,
Kind
now there's
of,
people
but
who claim like neo-paganism and stuff, but I mean, it's a construct. It
right.
wasn't like, oh, I'm a pagan in, you know,
Yeah.
3 CE or something. Yeah.
I think, yeah, that was just a term to describe more tribal type people back in the day. Yeah. These people had to elevate themselves above them. And thus, there you go, the writings were formed. Holy shit.
Well, and remember the whole idea of elevating yourself over other people. This was a time when food was much less assured than it is now, and I don't even know how assured it is for all the planet right now.
Well,
It's not. But I mean, if you were top dog, you had a better chance of getting to eat.
well, and then
So I
there
mean,
were times in
just
history.
go lizard brain, just look at everything biologically. It's like, oh yeah, okay. Just try to meet biological needs.
We've gone through many many dietary changes. I mean, we're so privileged now that people can choose to have certain diets, like taking things out, where it used to be, yeah, people would eat whatever was fucking available to them.
I
Isn't that
mean, we're so privileged now that there's entire industries around helping us take off all of the extra that we've shoved down our gullets.
yes, I know now we're all fat and
Gross.
oh
We're
man,
all fat. Well, there's still people in the world that don't have enough. I mean, like,
I
what
know.
are we doing?
I don't know, Pat. I
Come
don't.
on, humans.
Yeah, but yeah, getting back to that, I mean, some of the other teachings about Herbert W. Armstrong, I mean, he believed in divine intervention for things like healing. I don't know if our
Oh,
really touched on that, but apparently that was also a big thing, that there were, people that have died in his church because he said you're supposed to have divine healing. You're not supposed to go to your local physician, yada yada. Again, I don't remember much of that when we grew up, but apparently that was part of it. And tithing was definitely a requirement in the worldwide church of God. I mean, there was separate phases, and there's a lot of details there, but people had problems with Armstrong along the way because he lived very lavishly. He had a private jet. He would visit all these royal dignitaries and famous people. He had a lot of great stuff while his members started living in poverty, our parents included. I think they gave
oh
so
yeah.
much money to this church. I mean, we did
Oh
not.
yeah. Do you want to know how much?
Well, oh, do you actually know?
Oh yeah, like the whole 10% thing sounds really like a lot, right? Give 10%. Um, there was one point when I recall they were being pushed in the church to give 40%
It is
of
40%. I read too.
the gross,
Of the
not of the
gross.
net, of the gross. I mean, I honestly don't know how you make a mortgage payment. I mean, maybe you make your mortgage payment and still are able to do that, but that's the reason we had holes in the carpet down to the subfloor.
Yeah.
Um,
You
tack
ripped your
strips,
foot apart on one of them. Yeah.
yeah, on the tack strip
Nails. Yep.
because they didn't fix shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I don't get it.
We never had money. We never had money growing up. I mean,
And I mean, I didn't, like, yeah, of course I felt jealous when I saw my friends get like $200 boom boxes or whatever for Christmas, but like I didn't actually need that.
mm-hmm,
And I know I didn't, and that's fine. But
mm-hmm.
if you had the funds, speaking to parents here, if you had the funds to make sure the home that your children lived in was safe
Yep.
and you didn't do it because you were giving it to a religion
Mm-hmm.
or to a church, I'm sorry, but this is the reason we need to destroy religion completely.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what's that phrase or structure that you mentioned when you realized that someone is controlling you? There was some sort of like diagram showing if they control how you think, how you dress, what you eat. It was something
Oh, the
like
bite model.
the
That's
bite model.
determining a cult. That's for a cult. But it stands. I mean, I think it
It
stands.
stands.
I think on a personal level, if it's one person doing it, I think you can say they're a narcissist manipulating your life. If it's a church that does it, it's a cult. So the bite model. So it's
Mm-hmm.
the 4 areas of control, behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Um, shit. What's the I?
Ideas?
Thought and emotion is the T and the E.
Is it
What is
ideas?
the I? Maybe. Yeah, information. That's what it is. So
Information.
yeah, so
Oh, that's
bite is controlling your behavior, controlling the information that you take in, your
mhm.
thought and your emotion. So I mean, think about the fact of scriptures like when Jesus is saying, you've heard that you can't kill a man, right? Like it's against
Right.
God to kill a man. But
Mhm.
I say to you, if you even so much as think of it, or lust after a woman, or whatever,
Yes. Mhm.
right? So like, are we talking about thought control? I think so.
We are. Could try to control our thoughts. There you go.
Yeah, so the bite model, it's Stephen Hassan's bite model of authoritarian control.
That is so brilliant. I mean, it really, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot be controlled in any way anymore. No, no, done. Nobody should be controlling other people. Fuck.
So I think the bite model became extra clear to me. I mean, obviously we were raised in the Worldwide Church of God, so I think it was like I wouldn't necessarily have thought of it in this way because it was just normal, right? It was so
Right.
normalized. But then by the time I got a little farther along as a grown-up person, um, the bite model looked really obvious to me when our parents got into that other cult, Brother Stair's
Ugh.
whatever cult. Well, okay, because remember the things that Brother Stair said. He
Mhm.
said, get out of the cities, get out of the churches, get rid of your TV, and don't go to doctors. All 4 of those isolate you. And when you are isolated, controlling your behavior, no TV. So there, limit your information coming in.
Mm.
Live out not in a city. So you don't get exposed to other cultures, other ideas. Um, don't go to doctors. Holy shit. You know,
That
um,
was straight up.
well, he even said get out of the churches. I mean, it was
Yes.
just all the way.
Yeah. And
He and he alone could control what you were thinking.
oh, which is just another oh segment. Okay, so a little bit of backstory here. I mean, so Armstrong
I know.
died in
Sorry, we're gonna be all over.
no, no, you're fine. This is what we do. We go off on tangents. But yeah, so Armstrong died in 1986, and from there, others took over the church. His son Gardner took it over for a little while until there was some sort of infidelity scandal, whatever.
I think the Gardner guy was earlier. I think he was in the 70s. I think when Herbert
Oh,
W.
okay.
Armstrong died, it went directly to Joseph W. to Koch because his
Oh,
own
did it?
son
Okay.
had failed him. Yes.
And he's the one that eventually changed the whole doctrine and little more what modern evangelical, even maybe church.
Yeah, the Chakach guy. Yeah, the Chakach guy, the senior did. He started it. Like I think he saw it, but then his son, then he passed it to his son, who
Yeah.
was like fully more on the evangelical train, and that's when the church as we knew it went. Blah, blah, blah.
And there is that documentary out there called "Called to Be Free" documentary that you can find for free on YouTube that does talk about the changes that the church went through into more like Jesus and grace and salvation and that sort of stuff, which obviously the original people in the Worldwide Church God did not like, and a bunch of groups splintered off from there. So our parents eventually found one of those splinters, but before that, it would have been around 1999 that our dad decided he was going to move from central Wisconsin to South Carolina to join this commune. A man calling himself Brother Stair and Overcomer Ministries, which is actually still in existence, even though Brother Stair died in 2021, I believe. And he was accused of all kinds of gross, like rape, sexual assault of young girls, stuff caught on camera.
It's always in there.
Yeah. Well,
Groups like
Armstrong
that,
was too.
always. Yeah.
Armstrong was also accused of raping his child, and he married someone 50 years younger than him. Gross. And he was the one that preached, you're not supposed to get divorced, and yet he divorced that girl. And he actually said that if you get divorced, you're supposed to go back to your previous spouse. Like if you remarry, you're supposed to go back to your previous spouse to try to reconcile. Otherwise, you're living in sin. You know that? But then after that, so eventually, I don't even know what happened at that commune. I've tried to talk to Dad about it, but he doesn't really discuss it. He just said he was a false prophet. I'm like, gee, how did you come to that conclusion? But eventually he got out of that and he went to Restored Church of God in South Carolina. David C. Pack, this pastor.
Oh, I have watched atheist videos like picking apart the nonsense of those. They are the most nonsensical videos. It's not like the fundamentalists where they've got their apologetics all worked out. David C. Pack is like,
well,
it's like listening to Armstrong, except
worse,
put into a spinner and like. Bleh.
Oh, he's so arrogant, Pat. You just look at all this crap. He is the one that kicked Dad out of the church for asking questions. Like
David C. Pack is?
Yes, he's the guy.
Oh, I had no idea.
Yeah. Dad put together like this really long report. It was something to do with what constitutes a day. Like sundown to sundown, I think is what they've always been, but Dad was like questioning it. And Dad does all this research too on his own. He is just determined to get into the right church and the right ideals. And he brought this to David C. Pack, that pastor. He didn't even talk to Dad about it. Dad told me that this pastor, General Pack, just kicked him out of the church. And it is so, our parents are extreme even for these extreme ideas. It's insane. There were so many splinter churches that went off from Worldwide Church. There's Philadelphia Church of God, there's United Church of God, and each one of them are saying they're the true church and saying don't go to these other ones. It's insanity.
But they're consistent, right? It's not like they've bounced around to this new idea and that new idea. I mean, it's like to the opposite.
You know what I find interesting, Pat? Back when I actually told people I was a Christian, I had never read the Bible. Let me repeat that. Okay, let me repeat that one more time for all listening ears. When I said I was a Christian, I had never read the fucking Bible. I knew nothing about it, and yet here I thought I treated people like shit. I was so cocky, and here thinking I was a chosen one of God, which I don't even know if I believed in it, but yet I had this concept in the back of my mind because our parents wholeheartedly believe that they are the true ones out of all the true ones. You know, it's interesting that on occasion I run into people who grew up in the Worldwide Church of God. Even my professor in college up in Minneapolis, he used to work for the governor, and he even wrote, his name was Dan something. He even wrote a book about Governor Jesse Ventura and all of his crazy, weird, gross sexual exploits and stuff like that. But he was a member of Worldwide, and he was even still in a church. I think he was in United Church of God after that, and so they're out in the woodworks. So we're not we're not the only ones that are still trying to unravel all this horseshit.
I had made a TikTok, I think it's still out there actually, about Worldwide Church of God and having grown up in it. And I did find a few others that had grown up in it and like a lot of great like deconstruction, angry talking about that.
Right.
But I still did get a couple of comments that were like, it's not a cult. Okay.
Okay, prove us wrong.
Well,
First, let's determine what, constitutes a cult. That's the weird thing about definitions. Everyone has a different definition of what something is. And, even people argue about, okay, what's a Christian? Then there's true Christians and oh, they're not the right kind of Christians. Like, fuck all the way off, all of you. I'm so sick. It's so disgusting. And I'm just trying to live my life over here. I don't even want to do this. Like I have so many more important things to do. I'm going to go travel the world. I'm going to try to make my life and others better. But no, I have to keep deconstruct the one, leave it to our parents to find the most extreme churches they possibly can, which are still in it.
It cracks me up so much listening to David C. Pack actually, because I mean, the guy is like clearly trying to be Herbert W. Armstrong.
Yeah, well, he learned.
I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. He looks like him. The cadence of his voice is completely, hey, let's just recreate the old school World Tomorrow videos that Herbert W. Armstrong made. It's bizarro.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think
bizarre.
he thought that, yeah, Armstrong was the last great day prophet, as he said, and then he thinks now he is probably. I mean, that amount of arrogance, if you read his profile, like the description of him, oh, it's so disgusting and arrogant, Pats. I mean, talk about crawling up your own asshole.
Did you say hubris? Was that the word you said?
No.
Okay. Well, it would fit. It would fit the hubris of that.
Hubris. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's like undeserved. What am I trying to say? Like, it's like it's like the white man thing. It's the like thinking that they're top dog for no reason.
Yes.
Like that they just think they are because they're male and white.
Yeah.
And Christian. I mean, holy shit.
He's got all of it. Not only is that, he thinks he's like a prophet of God too, or like probably the only one. So, and you don't question him. Our dad questioned him, and therefore he was excommunicated from the church. Yeah, I remember mom saying how embarrassed she was by dad's actions. I'm like, what? He's not allowed to question this pastor? And then he gets kicked out. Yeah, I would say that's a problem. So
I mean, not like it's good, but in a way, I find it humorous and I actually want to congratulate Dad that he stood up to David C. Pack.
But you want to know how far this control goes, Pat? It's actually very sad that what Dad took out of that was that he should never have questioned the pastor to begin with. And he has, I think, so much guilt on him now because he questioned him. Like, oh, holy shit! It goes back to that phrase that you had told me. Like, how did it go? To learn who controls you or tries to control you, just figure out who you're not allowed to question. And that's exactly what that was. Yes.
I believe that's a quote from Voltaire.
Right. Oh, yeah. That sounds right, actually. That sounds right.
Yeah. I mean, it is a little bizarre, isn't it, that Dad's takeaway from that was, oh, I shouldn't have questioned.
Right.
Instead of like, oh, maybe this is actually all nonsense.
Yep. Yeah.
So weird.
That's very scary. Very scary.
Oh, I'm gonna listen to David C. Pack with like renewed vigor now.
Yeah. I actually haven't even really listened to any of his stuff. I did a little bit of reading up on him. I was like, yeah, this just sounds like Herbert W. Armstrong, and I kind of left it at that. But maybe, yeah, we should look into him a little bit more. There's always scandals and stuff like this. And I love calling him out by name too.
Yeah, there was had the amount of content that David C. Peck puts out is gross. Just so funny. Even the imagery of the world to come thing is like a direct rip off of World Tomorrow stuff. I mean, the whole thing, when I saw it, I was like, what is this? It's like some
Mhm.
strange backwards universe.
I didn't realize his name was kind of out there. So yeah, we'll definitely read up on him a little bit more. But then we have our
Well,
own backstory here, so
that changes things for how I'm picturing where our parents are at too, because in my mind, they were like the splinter groups they were following. I'm like, oh, it's probably just some random little church with like 50 people in it. But I didn't realize they were connected to big, big business church models.
yeah,
So stupid.
yeah, very interesting. Yeah, Dad's in a different church now called the Church of the Great God, something like that. I have actually attended their services. It's same ideologies and stuff like that, but I feel like people were really nice to him there. I guess he's made a lot of friends and he feels happy there, and I've got a chance to hang out with some of them. Yeah, I mean, at least he has some sort of community. They got together and actually bought him a car, and they've been real good to him. So I'd rather him be in a place like that, at least, than if he has to be in a church, which he apparently does. I'd rather him be in that one than, yeah, Restored Church of God, which our mother is
Oh,
still.
yeah.
Oh man.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, talk to me for a second. I gotta go turn some sausage.
Yeah. Oh, you got to do what with sausage? Sorry.
Have a party.
I love it. This is the kind of shit we shouldn't edit out. I mean, it's good. I remember watching YouTube channels where this one dude, he was commenting on something. He's like, "Oh shit, I gotta go to the bathroom 1 second," and then he just leaves for a moment, and then he comes back. I'm just like, he just left that in. I was like, that was great. It was fine. Yeah, yeah.
Well, so what's our takeaways from this attempt at an intro?
It's good. I mean, this just seems like a normal conversation that we would have any other day, and I think this was definitely one of the reasons that we wanted to start this podcast, is because we just keep going back to this topic no matter what we talk about. Yeah, we might talk about other things going on in the world, but we always seem to come back to the whole way we were raised and this religion that our parents are still in and how it impacted us. And there's so much to unravel that I think it's good we're starting this. I mean, others might take something from it. You and I will get healing from it. And yeah, I guess we'll continue as long as people want to hear it. And if anything, we're doing it for ourselves too.
Yeah,
So yeah, takeaways. I mean,
right. We're making them question enough to go look at stuff. Not we're not like giving an answer.
and that's the whole point of deconstructing, is that you question things. And when you're taught not to question things, that's not a good thing. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
Yep.
just trust. You should question everyone, your spouse, your family members, friends, whoever. You always have to question. We're not all going to have the right answers. But when people think the entity in question is a god that is perfect, I don't know how he's perfect, but okay. Yeah, I mean, I could go on and on about that, but yeah, we have a lot of topics that we can cover, and there's a lot of other people in this same sort of community that are deconstructing. So
Mm-hmm.
all we can do is talk about things from our perspective. No one can take our thoughts away from ourselves, because this is how we feel. These are, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's good. So yeah.
All right. Well, Nancy, it's been lovely talking with you in an official capacity
Official capacity, I
about
feel like nothing changed. We just happen to be recording this time. So yeah. And hopefully this exposes who David C. Pack is as a pastor. Like, you don't dare question his authority. I don't even know if he read what our dad wrote to him, questioning about what constitutes an actual day. But dad did a lot of research into it. And at least dad thoroughly studies shit. He does. That I will give him credit for. But to have someone like this pastor just completely excommunicate him without speaking to him says a lot to his character in that church, which is, again,
definitely
just an offshoot of Armstrongism. So
like researching. Dad researching is really good, except for the thing is when you research while holding on to all of your presuppositions,
Yes.
you're not really going to get very far.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I think he needs to start questioning outside the box. So yeah.
well,
Yeah.
yeah,
All right, Pat.
indeed.
It has been lovely. Yes, we have a lot more to
Yeah.
discuss, and we will pick up where we left off next time on Apostate Sisters. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us. All right. We'll chat next time. I love you, pets.
Love you too, Nance.
Uh,
Bye.
Bye.